Out of everything competing for your attention, something made you stop scrolling right here. You do not need to understand why yet. You do not need to have your thoughts in order, your apology rehearsed, your plan for next year figured out, before you are allowed to receive something good. You are welcome exactly as you are. Mid-mess, mid-confusion, mid-whatever season this actually is for you, without cleaning anything up first. So let your shoulders drop an inch. Let your breath slow down. You do not have to perform readiness for me. I already know exactly who is reading this. There is a voice loud in the world right now that thrives on urgency. It tells you to decide in the next 10 seconds or lose everything. It tells you the window is closing, the door is shutting. The miracle expires at midnight if you do not act immediately. I want to say something that might surprise you. That voice has never been mine. I do not design my invitations to expire before you have had time to breathe. If something is true tonight, it will still be true next week, next year, long after this moment has passed. You are not going to miss your purpose because you pause to think clearly. What I ask for is honesty, not speed. I would rather sit with you through a real question for a month than rush you into a shallow yes born out of fear that the moment was slipping away. It was never going anywhere. So breathe out. You are not late. You have not missed anything by pausing to consider. You have been carrying something for a while now, have not you? Something you could not quite put into words for the people around you, even the ones who love you, a quiet restlessness underneath the ordinary rhythm of your days, a sense that there should be more solid ground under your feet than you currently feel. You have asked questions in the middle of the night that nobody else heard. Is anyone actually paying attention to what I am carrying? Why does everything feel heavier than it should? Am I ever going to get out from under this? I heard every one of those questions. Not because I was eavesdropping from somewhere far away, but because I was already in the room with you when you asked them. I heard the version you said out loud into the dark, and I also heard the version underneath it. The one you did not have words for yet. The fear that maybe this is simply what your life is now. I heard that one too, and it did not push me further from you. If anything, it is the one I lean in closest to hear. I am not going to pretend I can answer every question you are carrying tonight. Some things unfold slowly, at a pace you cannot force no matter how much you want to. But I want you to know this. Your searching has never gone unnoticed. The restlessness in your chest is not a flaw in you. It is often the sign of a soul that has not stopped hoping, even when it is exhausted from hoping. A lot of people move through their days consuming everything and absorbing almost nothing. Not because they are careless, but because stillness has started to feel unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, like a silence that needs to be filled the second it appears. But you are still here. Staying, even for a few extra minutes, is its own quiet act of resistance against a world that keeps pulling your attention in 100 directions, none of them particularly interested in whether you are actually all right underneath it all. Let me tell you what stillness is not, because somewhere along the way it got a bad reputation. Stillness is not laziness. It is not falling behind while everyone else keeps moving. It is not wasted time you will regret later. Stillness is often the only condition under which truth has room to land, because a mind sprinting from one demand to the next rarely notices anything except the next demand. Think about how a lake behaves. When wind constantly disturbs the surface, you cannot see anything beneath it. Not the depth, not what is swimming below, not even your own reflection clearly. It is only when the wind settles that the water becomes clear enough to show you something true. Your mind works the same way. The noise you have allowed into every spare minute, the scrolling, the background television, the compulsion to fill every silence with something, has kept the surface disturbed for so long that you forgot what it looks like when it settles. This pause, right now, is the wind settling. Let it settle a little longer. Somewhere in your story there is a loss you are still making sense of. A door that closed without warning. A plan that fell apart right when it seemed most certain. A relationship that ended before you were ready to let it go. Maybe it happened recently, and the wound is still raw enough that you avoid thinking about it directly. Maybe it happened years ago and you have simply learned to carry it quietly, tucked away where it does not interrupt your ordinary days, except at moments like this one, when something slows down enough for it to surface again, I will not tell you every hard thing that has happened to you was something I orchestrated, as if pain were a puzzle I designed just for you to solve. That kind of thinking has hurt a lot of people and pushed them away from me, convinced I was the author of every wound they carry. But I will tell you this, I do not waste what is broken. There is an old story about a young man sold into slavery by his own brothers, the people who should have protected him above anyone else. He was taken to a foreign country, falsely accused of something he never did, and forgotten in a prison cell for years, long enough that hope would have been a reasonable thing to abandon. He watched other prisoners get released while he stayed behind, promised remembrance by people who then simply forgot him once they were free. Eventually, through a long, unlikely chain of events, he rose to oversee the resources of an entire nation during a famine. And that same preparation, forged during the very years that felt wasted and forgotten, ended up saving the lives of the very brothers who betrayed him. When he finally faced them, he said something worth remembering. You meant it for harm, but it was turned for good. That does not mean every closed door was mine to close. It means whatever has been taken from you, I am not finished writing your story around it. If you are lonely right now, I want to say something carefully, because it is easy to misunderstand. There is a version of spirituality that glorifies isolation, that tells you real strength means never needing anyone, that solitude proves you are chosen, set apart, above the ordinary human need for company. That has never been how I made you. From the very beginning it was said plainly. It is not good for a person to be alone. You were built for connection with me and with others, and no amount of self-sufficiency was ever meant to replace that. If there is a hand reaching toward you right now, a friend, a conversation you have been avoiding, a chance to be honest with someone about how you are really doing, do not wave it away just to prove you can handle everything on your own. I send people toward you because I love you, not to test how long you can survive without leaning on anyone. Let me sit with you in the loneliness first. Then let me walk you toward the people who are meant to walk with you. You may look back on this season and think it was wasted time, the waiting, the setbacks, the nights that felt like nothing was moving forward at all. It was not wasted. I am not telling you struggle is good for its own sake. It is not, and I never wanted you to suffer needlessly. But in the middle of it, something steady has been forming in you. Not because pain built it alone, but because you kept choosing not to give up entirely, even on the hardest days, even when giving up would have been easier and no one would have blamed you for it. Look at what is actually true about you right now. You have learned to say no to what drains you. You have learned that quiet is not emptiness. It is often where you finally hear your own voice again, underneath everyone else's opinions about who you should be. You no longer need everyone's approval to know your own worth, and that alone took longer to build than most people around you will ever realize. This is not a reward you earn through enough suffering, as if I keep score somewhere. It is you slowly becoming who I have seen all along, long before you could see it yourself. Let me tell you a story you may already know, not as a lesson, but as a mirror. A son left home, spent everything he had, and ended up with nothing, hungry, ashamed, unsure if he had even be welcome back. He rehearsed an apology on the long walk home, hoping only for a place among the hired servants rather than a place at the table. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and ran. No interrogation first, no waiting to see if the sorrow was convincing enough, just an embrace before a single word was finished. Then a robe placed on his shoulders, a ring on his hand, sandals on his feet, every sign that he was still, fully, completely a son, not a project on probation. That is the picture I hold of you right now. You do not have to arrive polished. You only have to turn toward me. I will be the one covering the distance every single time, no matter how many times you have had to turn around and come back before. I want to talk about money because I know it is one of the quietest, most persistent sources of anxiety you carry, even if you rarely say it out loud to anyone. The bills stacking up faster than the income covering them. The comparison to people who seem to have figured out something financially that you have not. The shame that creeps in when you cannot provide the way you wish you could. I am not going to hand you a formula that magically fixes your finances. That would be dishonest, and it would miss the deeper thing I actually want to address. Provision has never been about the size of the number in your account. It has been about whether you can trust me with what is actually in front of you today, this week. this month, rather than carrying the crushing weight of every future month all at once, before those months have even arrived. Scarcity has probably shaped more of your decisions than you would like to admit, pushing you toward choices driven by fear rather than genuine conviction. You are allowed to make decisions from a place of trust, rather than only from a place of fear about what might run out. I want to talk about the difference between religion and relationship, because somewhere along the way the two got tangled together in your mind, in a way that made things harder than they needed to be. Religion, at its emptiest, becomes a checklist. Enough prayers said, enough services attended, enough rules followed, in exchange for a sense that you are in good standing. It turns closeness into a transaction, something you earn through consistent performance, something you can lose through a bad week. That was never what I wanted with you. A relationship is not measured in perfect attendance. It is measured in honesty in returning, in the willingness to keep showing up even after a season where you did not show up at all. You could disappear from every religious practice you have ever known for years, and the moment you turned back toward me, you would find exactly what the young man found on the road home. Someone already running toward you, not tallying the absence, just glad you turned around. If guilt has been the main engine driving your spiritual life, I want to gently suggest that engine was never built to last, and it was never mine to begin with. Guilt can start a habit, but it cannot sustain one. Only love sustains something over years and decades. I want to talk about grief for a moment because I do not think enough people are told the truth about how long it is allowed to take. You may have lost someone or something months ago or years ago, and you have noticed that the world around you expects you to be finished by now. People stopped asking how you are doing about it. The check-ins slowed down and then quietly stopped altogether. And somewhere in that silence, you may have started to believe there is something wrong with you for still feeling it as sharply as you sometimes do. There is not. Grief does not run on a calendar that other people get to set for you. It does not move in a straight line either, despite what you may have been told. It moves in waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes overwhelming, sometimes arriving on an ordinary Tuesday for no reason you can identify. You are not doing grief wrong. There is no wrong way to carry a loss that mattered. I sat at a grave once for someone I loved deeply, and I wept, even though I already knew I was about to reverse what had happened. My tears were not smaller because the ending was already decided. Grief and hope are allowed to live in the same body, at the same time, without canceling each other out. Let me say something about your dreams, the ones you used to talk about with excitement before life wore some of the shine off them. Maybe you wanted to build something, create something, help people in a specific way. And somewhere along the road, responsibilities piled up, disappointments accumulated, and the dream quietly got shelved, not abandoned exactly, just set aside indefinitely, the way you set aside a book you intend to finish someday. I have not forgotten what I put in you. Dreams that come from me do not have an expiration date tied to your age, your circumstances, or how long it has been since you last pursued them actively. If your dream feels dormant right now, dormant is not the same as dead. Some things simply need a longer winter than you would have chosen for them. I want to address something quieter, something you might not have said out loud to anyone, the shame you carry about a habit you cannot seem to break. Maybe it is how you cope when things get hard, something that gives temporary relief and then leaves you feeling worse. Once the relief wears off, you have probably tried to will your way out of it through sheer determination, and you have probably also experienced how quickly determination alone runs out of fuel. I am not going to shame you further. You already carry enough of that without any help from me. The pattern you are stuck in is not a verdict on your character. It is often the best solution your nervous system could find at some point to a pain that had nowhere else to go. Understanding that does not mean staying stuck in it forever, but it does mean you can approach change with compassion instead of contempt for yourself. Because contempt has never once produced lasting change in anyone. I want to remind you of something you may have stopped noticing. The prayers that were already answered. It is easy to fixate on the requests still outstanding while walking straight past the ordinary evidence of provision and care that has already surrounded you. The meal on your table today, the body that, despite its struggles, got you through another day. The unexpected kindness from a stranger that arrived on a day you needed it more than you let on. Gratitude is not a denial of what is still hard. It is simply widening the frame enough to notice that the hard things are not the entire picture. I want to talk about the voice in your head, the one that narrates your mistakes back to you long after everyone else has forgotten them. You know the voice I mean, the one that resurrects an embarrassing moment from years ago at 3 in the morning for no apparent reason. Quick to catalog every way you have fallen short and slow to mention anything you have done well. That voice can feel like honesty, like accurate self-assessment. But often it is neither honest nor accurate. It is simply cruel. And cruelty dressed up as realism is still cruelty. If a close friend spoke to you the way that voice speaks to you, you would recognize immediately that they were being unfair. Yet you allow that exact tone from the voice inside your own head, day after day, without ever questioning whether it is telling you the truth. I do not speak to you that way, and I never have. When I look at what you did wrong, I see it clearly, but I hold it alongside everything else that is true about you. The effort, the growth, the moments you got it right that nobody applauded. You deserve at least the same fairness from yourself that you would offer a friend. I want to talk about community and why I keep bringing you back to this theme even though I know you have heard some version of it before. Healing that happens entirely in isolation is rare, because most of the wounds you carry were formed in relationship. Someone said something, someone left, someone failed to show up when it mattered, and wounds formed in relationship generally need at least some relationship to help mend them. I am not asking you to trust everyone. Some caution earned through real experience is simply wisdom, but I am asking you to resist the temptation to trust no one, to build a life so sealed off that nothing can hurt you again. Because that same seal also keeps out everything that could have healed you. I want to say something about identity from a different angle than before. You have probably spent a great deal of energy trying to figure out who you are by looking outward, at your job title, your relationship status, your achievements, the number of people who like or follow or approve of what you post. All of that is temporary scaffolding. None of it is actually you. Who you are was settled before any of that scaffolding went up, before the job, before the relationship, before anyone had a chance to approve or disapprove of anything about you. Strip all of it away, and something remains. Something that was there from the very beginning and will still be there at the very end. That is the part of you I am actually interested in. And it has never once needed to prove itself to me or to anyone else. I want to talk honestly about doubt because I suspect some part of you wonders whether any of this is real, whether hoping in something unseen is wisdom, or just an elaborate form of avoidance. I am not offended by that question. Doubt has visited some of the most devoted people who ever lived, and I have never once required certainty as the price of admission into my presence. You are allowed to hold both the doubt and the hope at the same time, without resolving the tension immediately. Faith was never the absence of questions. It was choosing to keep showing up, keep reaching, keep whispering an honest prayer even into what feels like silence. While the questions remain genuinely unanswered, I want to say something about the family patterns you may have inherited without ever choosing them. The way you respond to conflict, the way you handle anger, the way you have learned, without meaning to repeat certain habits from the household you grew up in, even the ones you swore you would never repeat. Noticing that pattern in yourself is not a failure. It is actually the first moment where change becomes possible, because you cannot interrupt a pattern you have not yet noticed you are inside of. You are not doomed to hand down every difficult thing that was handed down to you. Something can stop with you, not perfectly, not overnight, but genuinely, over time, with attention and support, and the willingness to do the harder, slower work of responding differently than you were shown. I want to talk for a moment about the questions that do not have quick answers. There was a man who lost nearly everything he had in what felt like a single unbearable stretch of time. His wealth, his health, people he loved. One devastating report arriving before he had even processed the last one. His friends sat with him in silence for 7 days, which was the most helpful thing they did. Because the moment they opened their mouths, they started offering explanations that were not true. He refused to accept those explanations even under enormous pressure. And here is what matters. I never handed him a full explanation either. Instead, I met him inside the very storm he could not understand, and reminded him there was a scale of wisdom he simply could not see from where he stood. He never got the explanation. What he got instead was my presence, undeniable, close, in the middle of the very thing that made no sense. And by the end, that turned out to be enough. You may be waiting for an explanation that is not coming soon. Maybe not for a very long time. I may not hand you that explanation today, but I will give you what I gave him, my presence in the storm. Close enough to touch, even when the sky refuses to clear on your schedule. There is another story I want to tell you, about a group of friends crossing a lake at night while I slept in the back of their boat, worn out from a long day. A storm rose up so violently that even these experienced fishermen were afraid for their lives. They woke me, panic in their voices, asking if I even cared whether they survived. I stood up and spoke directly to the wind and the waves, and the sea went still immediately, as though it had simply been waiting for permission to stop. Notice this: I was in the boat the entire time, not watching from the safety of the shore, close enough to be woken by shouting, close enough to reach out and calm exactly what was terrifying them. Your storm may still be loud right now, it may not have gone still yet, but I am already in the boat with you, and I have never once been caught off guard by a wave you did not see coming. You may have watched other people move forward while you stayed exactly where you were. New jobs, weddings, easy friendships, plans that seemed to fall into place for them without effort, while your own life refused to match anyone else's timeline. I want to gently interrupt that comparison before it settles any deeper, because it has never once told you the truth about your own story, only shown you a curated version of someone else's, missing every private struggle they carry behind their own closed doors. Their timeline was never a measurement of how much I love you. You are not actually behind. You are exactly where your story currently is, and I am still writing it with you, at the pace that fits what is genuinely being built in your particular life. There is likely a name sitting somewhere in your chest right now, someone who hurt you in a way you have not fully released, and I am not going to tell you what they did was acceptable, or that you owe them an explanation for your pain. It happened. It was real. But unforgiveness rarely punishes the person who caused the wound. It usually just keeps you tied to them, replaying the scene long after they have moved on. Forgiveness is not for their benefit. It is the door out of the room you have been locked in with them. Whenever you are ready to open that door, even a crack, I will help you carry the weight of walking through it. I know you want to see the entire plan laid out in advance, the guarantee before the risk, the ending before you are willing to keep reading. There is an old pattern worth remembering. A group of people once wandered through a wilderness for years, and every morning food appeared on the ground for them. Just enough for that day, never enough to store up for a month. When some tried to hoard extra so they would not have to trust again the next morning, it spoiled every time, as if to underline the lesson. This provision only works as a daily rhythm of trust, not a permanent stockpile. I know you want the guarantee for next year. What I am offering is enough for today, and it has never once run out on the people who kept showing up for it. I want to talk about the specific weight of worry because it deserves its own attention. You lie awake running scenarios that have not happened yet, the conversation that might go badly tomorrow, the bill you are not sure you can cover next month, a future version of a problem that does not even exist, except in the version your mind keeps rehearsing at 3 in the morning. I once pointed to birds in the sky and flowers growing wild in a field, ordinary things nobody planted or fed by hand, and asked a simple question: if I care for things that do not even plan for themselves, how much more do you think I care for you? Worry has never added a single day to anyone's life. It only ever subtracts from the day already given, by spending its energy on a day that has not arrived yet. There is a story about someone who owned 100 sheep, and one of them wandered off from the rest, alone, probably scared, unaware of how far it had drifted. The owner left the 99 who were safe and went looking for the one who was not. And when he found it, he did not scold it the whole way home. He carried it on his own shoulders, back to where it belonged. If you feel like the one who wandered further than feels forgivable, I want you to know I am already out looking, and I do not intend to make you walk the whole way back alone. There is a kind of waiting that feels like nothing is happening at all, and I want to be honest about what is actually occurring underneath the surface. A seed planted in the ground does not look like it is doing anything for weeks. If you dug it up every few days to check on its progress, you would find only dirt, and a seed that looks exactly the same as the day you planted it. But underneath, in the dark, roots are extending downward before anything ever breaks through the soil above. The waiting is not the absence of growth. The waiting is the growth, happening somewhere you cannot observe directly. You are not wasting this season. You are growing roots deep enough to hold whatever comes after it ends. I want to say something that might surprise you. It is all right to be angry with me. You may have carried a quiet, guilty anger for a long time, convinced that questioning me or resenting how things unfolded was somehow a betrayal, a sign of weak faith you needed to hide. Throughout history, some of the people closest to me were also the most brutally honest with me about their pain, crying out in words so raw, they are still remembered exactly as spoken without softening. I would rather have your honest anger than your polite distance. So if there is anger sitting in you right now, bring it here, exactly as bluntly as you feel it. I am not fragile, and I will not withdraw from you because you told me the truth about how much this has hurt. There will be days, maybe even today, when none of this feels true to you. You will hear it again, and something in you will simply say, "That sounds nice, but I do not feel it, not even a little." Feelings are real and they matter, but they are not always the most reliable narrators of what is actually true. What I am asking is not that you manufacture an emotion you do not have, but that you hold on to the truth with whatever grip strength you have left, even a fingertip hold, and let the feeling catch up whenever it is ready. It usually does, even if it takes longer than you would like. If part of what you are carrying right now is physical, a body that does not do what it used to, exhaustion that sleep does not fix, I do not want to skip past that. There was a man unable to walk for 38 years, watching other people get healed before him year after year. When I found him, I did not ask him to explain why he had been sick so long. I asked one simple question: do you want to get well? And then I told him to get up, and he did after 38 years. I tell you this not to promise an instant resolution to whatever you are carrying, because healing does not always arrive on the timeline we would choose. But a body that struggles is not evidence of a faith that is failing, and it never reflects how much I love you. I want to talk about fear for a moment, the kind that is not loud or dramatic, but simply sits underneath everything, quietly narrating worst-case scenarios about your health, your finances, your relationships, your future. Fear has a way of making itself feel like wisdom, like it is simply being realistic while everyone else is being naive. But fear and wisdom are not the same thing. Wisdom prepares, fear paralyzes. Wisdom says, here is a reasonable step I can take today. Fear says nothing you do will matter anyway, so you might as well spiral through every possible catastrophe instead of taking that step. Courage was never the absence of fear. It was simply moving forward anyway, with fear sitting in the passenger seat instead of in the driver's seat where it has been sitting for far too long. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from trying to control outcomes you were never actually able to control in the first place. You have probably spent significant energy trying to manage how other people perceive you, trying to engineer specific reactions from people who were always going to respond however they were going to respond regardless of your effort. I want to invite you into something less exhausting, doing your honest part, and then releasing your grip on everything past that point. You can show up with integrity, speak the truth kindly, do the work in front of you well, and still not control whether someone forgives you, whether the job comes through, whether the relationship survives. Peace lives on the other side of that release, not on the other side of finally getting good enough at controlling things you were never meant to control. I want to speak to the version of you that keeps starting over. Maybe this is not the first time you have tried to build a better routine, repair a relationship, quit a habit, or recommit to something you care about. Maybe you have started and stopped so many times that a quiet voice has started telling you it is not even worth trying again, because you will probably just fail the same way you have before. I do not measure you by your failed attempts. I measure the willingness to keep beginning again, because that willingness itself is a form of strength most people never develop, precisely because most people give up the third or fourth time and never discover what might have happened on the fifth or sixth attempt. Every apparent failure taught you something real about what does not work for you, which is not nothing. You are not starting from zero each time. You are starting from everything you learned the last time. even if it does not feel that way from where you are standing right now. I want to say something about joy, because in the middle of everything hard you are carrying, joy can start to feel like a luxury reserved for people whose lives are easier than yours. I want to gently push back on that idea. Joy was never meant to be the absence of difficulty. It was meant to coexist alongside it, a thread of genuine delight running underneath. Even a hard season, small moments, a good meal, an unexpected laugh, a piece of music that moves something in you. A quiet evening that felt, briefly, like enough. You are allowed to feel real joy even while you are still in the middle of something unresolved. I want to talk about aging and mortality because I know it crosses your mind sometimes, maybe more often as the years pass, the awareness that time is limited, that people you love will not be here forever, that you yourself will not be here forever. That awareness can either paralyze you with dread or clarify what actually matters to you. I do not want you to live haunted by the ticking clock, but I do want you to let the awareness of limited time sharpen your sense of what is actually worth your remaining hours. The grudge you have been nursing for years, is it worth the space it is taking up? The reconciliation you have been postponing, is it worth postponing another year? The dream you shelved, is there still time to take one small step toward it? What you have been asking for is not hiding somewhere in a distant, unreachable future. Most of the time, it is sitting quietly in the small, unglamorous step directly in front of you today. The phone call you have been putting off, the apology you know you owe, the help you keep turning down because accepting it feels like admitting weakness. You do not have to have the entire path mapped out before you take the first step. You only need enough light for the next one. I am not going to tell you this moment expires in 60 seconds. I am not going to tell you the door slams shut if you do not respond right now. What I will say is simpler. If something in this reached you, let it sit with you. Not just for the next minute, for the next few days. Let it come back to you quietly while you are making coffee, or driving, or lying awake tonight. Before we finish, I want to leave you with something practical, not just something comforting, because comfort without direction tends to fade by the time you are back in the middle of ordinary life tomorrow morning. When you wake up, before you reach for your phone, before the noise of the day floods back in, take 30 seconds and say something honest, out loud or in your mind. It does not need to be eloquent. It can be as simple as, I do not understand this season, but I am not walking through it alone. That is a real prayer. That is enough to start the day with. Then pick one person, just one, and let them further in than you usually allow. A message that says more than I am fine. A phone call you have been avoiding. One honest sentence to someone who has earned the right to hear it. Then take the one small step you have been avoiding, whatever that is for you specifically. Small is fine. Small is actually the point. I have never asked you for a giant leap. I have only ever asked for the next honest step, the one directly in front of you, not the entire staircase all at once. I want to talk about the mask you wear, the one you put on before you walk into work, before you answer the phone, before you show up at family dinners where everyone thinks you are doing fine. You have gotten so good at wearing it that sometimes you forget you have it on. You laugh at the right moments you answer. I am good without even thinking about whether it is true. That mask has probably protected you from a lot of unhelpful questions, and a lot of people who would not have known what to do with your honest answer anyway. I understand why you built it, but I want you to know that with me you never needed it in the first place. I already see what is underneath it, and I have not gone anywhere because of what I see there. You can set it down here, even just for the length of this moment, and nothing about how I feel toward you will change. I want to talk about comparison, because I do not think it gets named honestly enough. You scroll past a life that looks finished, a marriage that looks easy, a career that looks like it arrived without a single setback, and something in your chest tightens without your permission. You start measuring your unfinished middle against someone else's polished highlight, and the math never comes out in your favor, because it was never a fair comparison to begin with. What you are seeing is a few seconds someone chose to share, not the years of struggle they did not film. I am not asking you to stop noticing beauty in other people's lives. I am asking you to stop using it as a ruler for your own worth. You were never in competition with them. There was only ever one version of the life I planned for you, and it was never going to look like anyone else's. I want to talk about the words that were spoken over you a long time ago, maybe by a parent, a teacher, someone whose opinion mattered more than they should have been allowed to matter. Words like "you will never amount to anything," or "why cannot you be more like your sibling," or "you are too much," or "you are not enough." Words like that do not just fade with time the way people assume they should. They get absorbed quietly into how you introduce yourself to the world, into the apology you give before you have even done anything wrong, into the flinch that happens when someone raises their voice near you. I did not speak those words over you, and I do not agree with them. They were never a prophecy. They were the limited, wounded perspective of someone who was carrying their own unhealed pain and handed a piece of it to you without meaning to, or sometimes without caring that they did. You are allowed to let those words expire. You are allowed to write new ones over yourself slowly, even if it takes years to unlearn what took years to learn in the first place. I want to talk about the ordinary days because I do not think enough is said about them. You are waiting for the mountaintop moment, the breakthrough, the dramatic turnaround you can point to later and say, "That is when everything changed." But most of life, even the parts I am most present in, happens in ordinary days. The laundry, the commute, the small kindness you offered a stranger without thinking about it, the dinner you made for people you love. I am not only in the miracle, I am in the Tuesday, I am in the load of dishes and the long meeting and the quiet drive home. You do not have to wait for something spectacular to happen before you believe I am near. Look for me in the small, unremarkable hours. That is usually exactly where I have been the whole time. I want to talk about the people you are responsible for, the ones who look to you, whether that is children, a spouse, aging parents, co-workers, or simply friends who lean on you more than you lean on them. You have probably convinced yourself that you have to have it all together for their sake, that falling apart in front of them would somehow fail them. I want to gently challenge that. The people who love you do not need a flawless version of you standing at the front, performing strength you do not actually feel. They need an honest version of you, someone willing to say, "I do not have this figured out either, but we will get through it together." Your strength was never meant to look like invulnerability. Sometimes the most important thing you can model for the people who depend on you is what it looks like to be human, tired, and still showing up anyway. I want to talk about the prayers you have stopped saying because you got tired of asking for the same thing and watching nothing change. Maybe you used to pray about it every day, and now you do not bring it up at all, partly out of exhaustion, partly out of a quiet fear that if you stop asking, you will stop being disappointed. I understand that instinct, but I want you to know that silence from you does not change how closely I am watching over what you stopped asking about. You are allowed to bring it back even after months of not mentioning it, even if the only thing you can honestly say is, "I gave up on this." But I do not actually want to have given up. That is still a real prayer. I have never once required your requests to arrive polished or persistent to be heard. I want to talk about the version of you that shows up when nobody's applauding. The late nights nobody saw, the effort that never got acknowledged, the times you did the right thing even though it cost you something and no one ever knew it cost you anything at all. I saw every one of those moments, not because I am keeping some ledger to reward you later, but because nothing about your life happens outside my attention. Recognition from other people is nice when it comes, but it was never the thing your work was actually for. What you built quietly in the dark, where no one was watching, still counts. It still matters. It was never wasted just because no one clapped. I want to talk about the specific fear of being a burden, because I think it is quieter and more common than most people admit. You have probably held back from asking for help, even when you desperately needed it, because some part of you is terrified of being too much, of taking up too much space, of being the reason someone else's life gets harder. I want to gently push back on that fear. You were never designed to carry everything by yourself as proof that you are not a burden. The people who genuinely love you would rather carry something with you than watch you drown quietly while pretending you are fine. Letting someone help you is not weakness. It is actually one of the most trusting things you can offer another person. The chance to show up for you the way you have probably shown up for them more times than you can count. I want to talk about the anxiety that shows up in your body before your mind even catches up to it. the tight chest, the racing heart, the way your shoulders climb toward your ears without you noticing until they are already there. I am not going to tell you that enough faith would simply erase that response, because that is not how bodies work. And I built your body. I know exactly how it responds under stress. What I want you to know is that your anxious body is not evidence of a failing spirit. Sometimes the most faithful thing you can do in a moment of panic is simply breathe slowly and remind your body that it is safe right now. In this specific moment, even if the larger situation still feels uncertain, caring for your body is not separate from caring for your soul. They were never meant to be treated as two different projects. I want to talk about the seasons when you feel far from me, when prayer feels like talking to an empty room, and worship feels like going through motions. You do not feel anything behind. Those seasons are more common than you think, even among people whose faith looks solid from the outside. Feeling distant from me does not mean I have moved. Sometimes it means you are in a season of growth that does not come with the emotional warmth you are used to. A season where trust has to carry more weight than feeling. I have never left the room just because it went quiet. Keep showing up, even when it feels like nothing, especially when it feels like nothing. That kind of persistence without the emotional payoff is some of the most durable faith there is. I want to talk finally about what happens after this message ends. After you close this, after the room goes quiet again and ordinary life resumes exactly where it left off. I am not asking you to feel transformed right now. I am asking you to let this be one honest moment in an ordinary day. A small marker that you paused, that you let yourself be spoken to gently instead of rushed past. Tomorrow will bring its own noise, but you will carry this moment with you into it, whether you remember these exact words or not, because something in you paused long enough to receive it, and that pause was never wasted. I want to talk about the specific ache of feeling misunderstood, even by the people closest to you. Maybe you have tried to explain what you are going through, and the words came out wrong, or the person listening simply could not meet you where you actually were. And you walked away from that conversation feeling more alone than before you started it. That is a particular kind of loneliness, the kind that happens even inside relationships, even inside rooms full of people who care about you. I want you to know that I have never once misunderstood you, not even the parts you could not articulate, not even the version of your pain that does not translate into words at all. You do not have to explain yourself to me the way you have to explain yourself to everyone else. I already know what you meant, even when you said it clumsily, even when you did not say it at all. I want to talk about the future you are afraid to hope for, because hoping and then losing it again feels like it might be worse than never hoping in the first place. So you have protected yourself by lowering your expectations, by preparing for disappointment before it even arrives, telling yourself it probably will not work out so the eventual letdown will not hurt as much. I understand that instinct completely, but I want to gently invite you to consider what it is costing you to live that way permanently, bracing for loss instead of leaning into possibility. Hope was never meant to be reckless, but it was also never meant to be something you abandon just to protect yourself from feeling. You are allowed to hope again cautiously, honestly, even after the times hope did not turn out the way you wanted. Hope disappointed is not hope wasted. It is still evidence that something in you refuses to go numb. I want to talk about the quiet resentment that sometimes builds when you have done everything right and still watch things fall apart anyway. You kept your promises, you showed up. You did the responsible thing when the irresponsible thing would have been easier. And somehow the outcome still did not match the effort you put in. That kind of disappointment can curdle into something bitter if you let it sit too long. A quiet belief that trying does not actually matter, that the people who cut corners seem to get ahead anyway while you are left waiting. I do not want that bitterness to take root in you. Doing the right thing was never a transaction that guarantees a specific outcome on a specific timeline. It was always about who you were becoming in the doing of it, not simply what you would receive in return. The character you built while doing things the harder, honest way is not nothing, even when the results have not shown up yet. I want to talk about the part of you that still has not forgiven yourself, even though you have told other people it is fine, even though you have moved on in every visible way. There is a specific memory that still makes you wince when it surfaces uninvited. A decision you made or did not make. that you wish you could go back and undo. You have served your own sentence for that mistake many times over by now, replaying it, punishing yourself quietly, refusing yourself the same grace you had extend to literally anyone else who came to you with the same story. I already dealt with what you did. I am not still holding it against you, still keeping the file open, still waiting for you to suffer enough before I close the case. You can close it too, not because what happened did not matter, but because carrying it forward indefinitely was never going to undo it, and it was never going to make you safer from making a different mistake in the future. I want to talk about the specific kind of tired that comes from being strong for a long time. The exhaustion that is not about one hard day but about years of steady responsibility with no real break in sight. You have become the person people call when things go wrong, the one who holds things together while everyone else is allowed to fall apart. That role can be a genuine gift, and I do not want to diminish the good you have done in it. But even the strongest hands need somewhere to set things down occasionally. You are allowed to be the one who needs help sometimes. You are allowed to not have the answer. You are allowed to let someone else carry something for a while, even if it feels unfamiliar, even if you have forgotten how. I want to talk about the small rebellions of ordinary hope, the decision to plant something even though you do not know if you will be here to see it grow, the decision to save a little money even during a hard month, the decision to keep showing up to something that has not paid off yet. Those choices might look unremarkable from the outside. They are actually acts of quiet defiance against every voice telling you nothing will change, that effort is pointless, that you might as well stop trying. Every time you choose to keep going, you are declaring, without necessarily saying it out loud, that you still believe something good is possible. I notice those small rebellions. They matter more than you think. Before I let you go tonight, I want to say one more thing plainly, because I do not want it lost in everything else. Nothing you have done, and nothing that has been done to you, has changed how I feel about you. Not the mistake you are still ashamed of, not the years you spent far from me, not the anger you have directed at me during the hardest seasons, not the doubt that still visits you sometimes, even now, even after everything you have heard tonight. I am not keeping score. I am not waiting for a better version of you to show up before I welcome you fully. I already have. You have carried enough for long enough. You do not need one more accomplishment, one more year of enduring, one more proof of your own strength before you are allowed to rest in this. Let your breath out slowly. Let your shoulders drop from wherever they have been sitting near your ears for longer than you realized. Let whatever you have been gripping so tightly loosen in your hands, even if only for this moment. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not too far gone to come back from wherever you have been. Whatever distance you feel between where you are and where you think you are supposed to be, it is closer than it feels right now, and it has never once been too far for me to reach across. I am here, not rushing you, not measuring you, not waiting for you to earn anything. Just here steady, unhurried, for as long as it takes.